Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to continue the series on codependency, and tonight we're going to work on families of origin. Okay, I want to begin by doing a reading from my book, Untitled Today. I basically do this prayer every morning as I start my morning prayers. God, I open myself up to you. May I be filled with the light of your presence. May I be filled with the power of your truth. May I live up to the faith you have in me. May I fulfill the purpose you have etched in me. May I learn to depend upon, rely upon, and trust you in every aspect of the life you have entrusted to me. May my life be a shining example of your wisdom and glory. May I dignify your presence in me and in my life by living the principle of your love. Thank you, God, for I know that as I ask, you answer. For all I have received and all that is yet to come, I am extremely grateful. I love that prayer because it's a powerful way to just begin the day, get the day started, and begin to get connected with the God of my understanding. I want to continue the series, and just want to mention before I get into tonight's topic, is to remind everybody what I talked about last week. One of the things we emphasize when we talk about family of origin and doing family of origin work, we don't recommend anybody doing it unless they do it with a positive attitude. Because everything we're doing is about healing. It's not about finding out what's wrong. It's not about blaming. It's not about being hard on ourselves. It's about healing, forgiving, and being able to move forward. Because I'm convinced from my own work and the stuff I've done that all the things that you experience in life, I can look at them negatively, or I can learn good and healthy lessons from them and do my growing from them. And that's how the process of life works. It's one of the reasons why when I wrote my other book on codependency, I used the topic, learning to value your childhood, your history is your teacher. Our history is our most powerful, most beautiful teacher in life. Unfortunately, for many of us, that history may have been dark at one time, may have been crazy at one time, but that's okay. We can find the light and we can move forward. That's what's important. So tonight, what I want to do is teach you a technique and a way to begin to do your own family of origin work. What I want to talk about is based on those 7 questions I told you about. You can find them on our website down at the bottom of Vince's Corner. Those 7 questions are the foundation of some of the work we're going to be doing. And again, it's up to you where you take this and what you want to do with it. But I do want to mention the fact that this process does work better when you do it in conjunction with a couple of other people. So in the fall, I am going to start 2 groups and take people through the process. So I'll be announcing that in August and basically a time and when we'll be doing them. So if people are interested, I do want to mention the fact also that as we do family of origin work, we're not just talking about your blood family. Remember, the first 10 to 12 years of your life are the foundation years of your life. Even when things happen later on in life, traumas, things that happen, losses, they activate the little child that's inside of you. Everything's connected. And that's why it's important for us to do this type of work. So we realize the fact that I might be angry at somebody in my adult life, but really in reality, where's that anger coming from? Where are these things happening inside of me? And many times they're coming from my roots and my foundations, the things that went on inside of me as a child. And I realize today, whenever somebody tries to either control me or possess me, the little kid inside of me says, no, we ain't doing that game anymore. It's amazing. That little kid kicks right in. And I'm learning as I get in touch with that little boy inside of me, the little girl inside of you, whatever it happens to be, you got to get in touch with the real foundation, the roots and the foundations of everything in life. And so the order to do that is a technique that we use. And to me, I'm very happy to be able to share this because my therapist shared it with me a long time ago and taught me it. And I use it and I love it. It's called a journaling technique. I never realized until I started hanging around, the crazy people at the South Philly clubhouse and a bunch of those great old timers. They used to say something to me all the time. They used to say, the greatest therapy tool on the face of the earth is writing. Writing by hand, not on machines, as they used to say. The Italians call them machines, not on machines, but by hand. Because when you write, you process. When you write, stuff flows. And I truly understand that today because doing this work, and then as a result of it, the 3 books that I wrote every one of them by hand. But I had my secretary type them. But I couldn't believe how stuff flowed when I was able to write. And writing's a powerful tool, it really is. And so what we do in this program is we ask you, I mentioned it back in the beginning, to get yourself 2 notebooks. So the tools you'll need for doing family of origin work are 2 notebooks, and I recommend what I call a God box. I'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. And by a God box, my God box is a shoebox. Nothing to elaborate. Anything you want to use, just so it's something you can put stuff into. The 2 notebooks are important because we have a negative notebook and a positive notebook. The thing we have to learn how to do is to separate our thoughts and separate our feelings into negative and positive. Because sometimes we mix everything up and get them all confused. And so one of the techniques we teach you to do is take your negative notebook. And then in that negative notebook, I want you to make a list of all the negative persons, places, and things that affected you in your growing up process of the first 10 years of your life. Now, when I talk about, I'm not just talking about your family of origin, all the other families I talked about. That's why when I put those questions together, I want you to be able to answer these, make that list based on these questions. What are your perception of your parents, of your grandparents, of your neighborhood, your cultural, your environment, your religious systems and backgrounds from your childhood, the same concept of your peers, how all these things affected you. Also, your perception of yourself as a child, and to look at and see how all these things had an effect on you in your growing process, even when it comes to relationships. So it's all part of the process we go on. You see, nothing happens in life by accident. We are supposed to learn and grow from all the experiences that we go through. And as you do that negative list, and here's the key to understand too, because I got to say this because most of us in this room are card-carrying codependents. So I got to say it. The list does not have to be 40 pages long. Say a prayer, and whatever comes up as you write these negative things, just put them down. You might work on 5, 6, or 7 different things to begin with. Down the road, some other stuff may surface. Things may happen. I'll give you some examples of this in a couple of minutes. But the bottom line is just work on that list. When you're done, go to the positive notebook and make a list of all the positive persons, places, and things that affected you when you were a child. Now, what you're actually doing is you're preparing yourself for the work you're going to do. Because you're going to be able to do is you're going to learn the process, which is so important. And it goes back to a simple little technique that we should have learned, but I know way back then, but we learned it later in life. What can I tell you? But the bottom line is that technique is, instead of reacting to things in life, I have to learn to respond to them. And this technique helps you to do that. You see, there's a little kid inside of us that is the reactor. There's the adult in us that has to be able to parent that little child and help that child to respond to things instead of reacting to them. Although reaction is part of the journey. So we are going to have those little things that happen. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about in my own life. It's one of my favorite examples. Back in 1996, I was running groups and getting done at starting point pretty late at night. And, I'd be done around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I'd head home. And when I got home this one night, it was pretty cold, but I think it was somewhere in the vicinity of 5 or 10 below zero. We had that real cold spell way back then. And in my house, I have a dog, and my dog is a husky. So my dog was an outdoor dog. And so, we had a big yard back then, and she used to run and have a good time. So the bottom line was I got home around 10:30, 20 or 11, and I walked in the kitchen. There was a note on the table that said, "Vince, I'm sorry I didn't get to feed the dog today. Would you please go out and feed the dog?" Well, I was tired. It was late. And my little boy had to have a little fit. I started saying to myself, "You're home all day. What the hell did you do?" I said, I was grouchy as hell, because I was tired. So I was bitching. I was complaining. I got the food. I went out and fed the dog. I literally threw the food at the dog. But the dog didn't care. The dog ate it anyway. But the bottom line was, I was really aggravated. So when I came in, I stopped for a second. The adult in me stopped and said, "Whoa, calm down." The old me would have went to bed, and I would have laid in bed saying, yeah, and grouchy and uptight and aggravated. Of course, I've got a lousy night's sleep. I said, "Let me take 2 minutes." So I got out my notebook and I wrote my wife. Let my little kid get it all out of its system. And when I was done, I wrote her in the positive notebook a nice love letter, a letter of healing. The next day, when we got up, came downstairs, I told her what happened, and I kind of read the 2 letters to her. And she said to me, "Well, Vince, the reason why I didn't feed the dog was I had 102 temperature all day." I said, "Well, do me a favor next time. Put that in the note." Would have saved me a lot of writing and a lot of aggravation. But it's funny sometimes when you look at this and you see what happens. And sometimes that little kid inside you just kicks up. And so what I want you to try to learn how to do is this writing technique, which is really great. For example, let's say I'll use my own list, the only list I can use. My mother and my dad were on my negative list. The church was on my negative list. Now, what you then do is you take your negative notebook, and I proceed to write to my mother a negative letter, giving my little child permission to express any negative feeling I might have. Just say a prayer, write the letter, and let it flow. Whatever comes out, comes out. Don't force stuff. Remember the principle. Whatever you're ready to let out, God will allow it to happen. Just say a prayer and let it out. Once I was able to finally get that out to my mom, then I go to my positive notebook, and the adult in me is now going to tell my little boy, "Thank you for sharing all that. Now, what lessons can we learn from what happened to you and your mom? What are the positive lessons we can learn?" What the adult in you is going to try to do is take what you experienced and try to process it into good, positive examples, good, positive lessons that we can learn and grow from. At the same time, to be able to let the person know that you love them, you care about them, and you want to make peace. It's interesting, some of the beautiful things I learned as a result of that. I learned, the adult in me was able to look at my mom and say, "Mom, you really did a number on me when I was a kid. You controlled me like crazy, everything else, all that stuff came out. You heard me talk about it before. And basically, you even sent me off to the seminary when I was 14 years old, and all these things and everything else. But what I learned from my mom gave me my addictive personality. I put that in my negative letter. In my positive letter, I was able finally to thank her for my addictive personality, because it got me into recovery. It got me to meet people like you. It got me to connect with people in the program. It got me to open up a lot of doors as a result of it. And so, I really believe that there is a positive in every negative, even though I know it's painful sometimes. Sometimes it's just writing a love letter, even if you have a hard time with it. I've seen this happen with people who've lost children, who've lost a person in their life. And they need to be able to let that person know how they feel. And sometimes you have to be able to let those feelings out. And it's okay. At the same time, then, to be able to write on the other side a letter of love, a letter of caring, a letter of healing. This is good for the grieving process. This process is good for every different area of our life. And you have to say goodbye. I know I use this process in finally grieving my father and my mother's death, which, by the way, I didn't grieve till years and years later after they died, because I was too frozen to be able to grieve back then. And so I realize now this process taught me that. But my little boy needs to have a healing process. The biggest thing is your inner child needs to have a voice, be able to express itself, be able to get its feelings out. Because I'm going to tell you, if you don't, if you hold that stuff inside of you, it will come out sideways. It'll come out in different people, different situations, and you'll wonder sometimes some of the crazy stuff that we'll do. This technique really does work. It's a pretty powerful technique. But I got to be able to go back and look at my family of origin. I know when I did my Italian family growing up, some of the rules and regulations we had back then were ridiculous. We talk about isolation, talk about prejudice, talk about things we learned, things that were connected. How to be able to finally talk about that stuff and get that stuff out. And that's the big part about writing. You're able to finally get it out, put it out there. And you'll find that different things that happen in life, even when it comes to the church, I was able to get a lot of my anger out towards the church, my feelings I had towards the church. At the same time, I love the church. In my positive letter, I was able to tell them, thank you for all the things you did for me in all those years, the things I've learned, the things I've gone through. At the same time, I had a lot of negative stuff I needed to let go of. I had to write a letter to the bishop and let him have it. Some of the stuff that occurred in the course of my life. These were things I was able to do now and give my little boy permission finally to let some of this stuff out. And then later on, I could use these techniques in other areas of my life. It's totally amazing. You come right down to it. But writing, journaling, negative, positive. Always remember though, don't just do the negative. You have to finish the negative by going to the positive. And even if you have to fake it till you make it, that's okay. You got to go to the positive and try to learn something positive from every experience. A lady said to me one time, how could I say to my abuser something positive? I said, well, maybe the one thing you can say to the abuser is, I got my feelings out about how I was abused and what it did to me. And now at least I know that I will no longer give you any power. And secondly, now I know what abuse is. And I have a choice today not to allow anyone to abuse me. So there is a lesson I learned from all this. I can move forward. The secret is to keep moving forward, to be able to use this process in a positive way. And so what you do with that list, once you put it down, is you then take your notebook, you write your letters, get your letters out, process them, negative and positive. Then find somebody you trust, somebody you feel comfortable with, your sponsor, somebody that you really know is going to listen to you and not give you advice, okay? Then what you do is you take the letters, the negative letter, and you read it to them. After you've read the negative letter out loud, you then take it, tear it up, go to your God box, say a prayer, and tell your higher power, I now release this, and I give it to you and drop it in a box. and then read your positive letter that you wrote, your lessons, or a love letter, whatever you happen to write. And then basically, keep that. If you want to, I have a thing called a love box. I put my positive stuff in the love box. You can do it whatever way. You just keep it if you want. Don't tear the positive letter up. Go back and review them every so often. This is a technique you can use for the rest of your life, but you take it to all different areas. And that's why I use the 7 questions to help you start getting this juice flowing inside of you. And so in the beginning, what you do is you take the 7 questions, and remember, it's perception. So what was your perception of your parents as a child? What was your perception of your grandparents as a child? What was your perception of your neighborhood, your cultural, your environment? How did it have an effect on you? What was your perception of your growing up process? Some of the things you experienced that you learned as a result of that. What was your perception of your religious background? I grew up in a religious background of fear and guilt. How to be able to say goodbye to that and let it go. And then talk about the gift of love I had towards God today, be able to move in a new direction. It's okay to make changes. It's okay to grow. It's okay to move forward. That's the key to this whole thing, to have the willingness to change, the willingness to grow, the willingness to move forward, the willingness to heal. And one of the reasons I want to be able to release all that negative garbage and get it out of me. Remember I told you about my fertilizer principle? If you get all that crap out of you and you process it, it then becomes fertilizer for your recovery to help you to grow. And so manure is a wonderful way. We all got crap, congratulations. We got to be able to process it, that's all. We've all gone through stuff, it's all part of the journey. To look at the concept as what was your perception of yourself as a child? I didn't have a good perception of me as a child. I was like this little church mouse that had no idea who the hell he was. And literally, I was scared to death of everybody and everything. I was trained well in that direction. And so as a result, I got bullied, I got taken advantage of, I got all kinds of shame. I did a lot of this work out. I hate even going back over it, to be honest with you. But the bottom line is, I was able from that to do some growing and do some learning and move in a new direction. And that's why this technique is something you can use for the rest of your life. Say, for example, you have a job and you work at your job and you have a boss that you would, he kind of classifies as a horse's you-know-what. And you would like to, because he's really a pain, he's nasty and everything else, you would like to take a chair and kind of part his hair. But if I did that, I would go to jail. It's okay to feel that, by the way. So what do? Instead of hitting him over the head with a chair, I get my negative notebook out, write the guy a wonderful, fantastic, nasty letter and get all that crap out of my system. Let him have it. Then in my positive letter, I want to feel, how can I learn from this? What can I do? And sometimes you can't go back and talk to the person about it. Sometimes no response is a good response. But maybe in the job situation, the lessons I learned is I have to go back to school, improve my skills, and look for a different job. Instead of sitting around, being bitchy all day long on my job. Make progress, move forward. So it's the same thing as regards everything else in life. I want to be able to move forward and make progress and heal. Because our parents, our family, our neighborhood, our environment, they're all our teachers. They're part of your history. They're part of who you are. And I realize today, some of that I got to shed, some of it I hold on to, and some of it still comes back. I told you many times, I have a PhD in guilt and fear and guilt and worry. And even if I take a day off, I still worry, drive myself crazy. I don't know how to do it. I'm getting better at it. I still don't know how to do it. It's totally amazing. I felt guilty yesterday because I couldn't go in to take part in a workshop with Loretta. And I felt guilty all day because I should be there. And I couldn't be there because I had to get some work done on my eye. And of course, what's that stuff they do, put those drops in your eyes? I couldn't even see straight to my living room. It was totally amazing. So I couldn't drive. But it was crazy, but I felt guilty. And Loretta's happy I felt guilty. It's not a problem there, but it's no problem. But I mean, the concept is, I realize over and over again, my codependency still kicks in. Those little things still come into play. Sometimes I have a hard time making a decision. And yet I got to process this stuff and work through it. I know one thing I don't want to do. I don't want to go back and freeze this stuff inside of me and bury it. Because burying my crap and burying my feelings and burying the stuff going inside of me and holding it in for all those years got me two beautiful addictions. It also got me a nervous breakdown. I don't want that in my life anymore. I want to be able to work through stuff. And so I've learned through this technique how this can really work. You can begin to learn about your family of origin and do your history. If you have a hard time with it, get some help. Get people to help you with it. That's why I say doing it by yourself doesn't always work. There's things we have to process, we have to go through, we have to work on. But it takes time. And that's why this is a lifetime process I'm teaching tonight, because it's not something you do one time. I got to say that to codependents, because you want to go home tonight and get it all done tonight. Please don't do that. A little bit at a time. You might get 2 letters done this week and then a letter done next week. But things that come up, start learning to process them, to let them out. Let that little child inside of you have a voice. You can also take this to another level, and there's a teenage voice you have. There's a young adult voice. Some of us have senior citizen voices now. Whatever your voices, you have all these voices inside of us. I think I'm going to go see a psychiatrist. I got all these voices in me. But the bottom line is, I'm realized over and over again, it's all part of my history, part of my growth process. I mean, I did this the other day with a good friend of mine because he was going through a lot of stuff. And I said, look, it's about addiction. I said, what were the years of your life that your addiction was active? He said from 13 to about 25. That's when I got into recovery. I said, good. Now, what I want you to do is give your addicted voice permission to begin to release its feelings and get in touch with that period of your life. Exact same thing. Make a list of all the negative persons, places, and things, and then what positive lessons can I learn from them? It's a period of your life you have to be able to go through. You have to be able to face and deal with and process the feelings out. And then we'll take you from 25 on as you're in recovery. Recovery 9 years, so from 25 to 34. And we'll process stuff that way too. So what I'm teaching tonight is a beautiful process you can use in all different areas of your life, even on your job, a lot of times, because things happen. I'll share a little story with you. And we have a visitor. I got to be careful what I say. You have a little one here now. But I want to kind of share this concept with you, which is so important. Years ago, when I worked in Philly as the EAP counselor for the Philadelphia Water Department and for the airport, I was also involved back then with a lot of cases of domestic violence. And it was interesting. I went to domestic violence court, and one of the things one of the lawyers said to me, he said, Vince, about 60% of the people that come in here are normally first-time offenders. And basically, they're usually pretty angry people. That's why we send them to anger management classes. They're pretty angry people. And what happens is that stuff is built up inside of them and it comes out. Sometimes it'll come out sideways on your kids. It'll come out on your spouse. It'll come out of a job. And that explosion can get you into a lot of trouble with these individuals. And that's why I love this, because it's the old concept of the Karate Kid. Remember the Karate Kid? Wipe on, wipe off, wipe on. Yes, now, here's our new philosophy in recovery. Negative out, positive in. Negative out, positive in. Negative out, positive in. It's the same thing as our 4th and 5th step, our 6th and 7th step, our 8th and 9th step. It's all about cleansing. It's all about cleansing things on the inside. I call it the Windex of recovery. It's fantastic. We clean all this stuff out on the inside. And as a result, then we feel cleaner, we feel more positive. We look at life in a positive way. And what I love so much about it is there are so many beautiful positive lessons you can learn from all this. My dad, I love my dad. Wonderful, fantastic, great guy. But he was too great. People took advantage of him. People used him. I became my dad. My wife said one time, Vince, you got a target on your back. Take a break. And in my own life, I realized more and more I was doing stuff and running around like a nut. I never took care of me. And now I do take care of me and make time for my recovery, make time for my program, make time for my sponsor, make time to do the things I need to do, my prayer, my meditation. I'm learning to make changes, but I'm learning also, I don't want to walk around carrying these deep feelings inside of myself and then being angry at people, being frustrated at people. Do I get frustrated? Oh yeah, constantly. Loretta frustrates me. It's no problem. I frustrate her. We're the Mutual Frustration Society. It's a lot of fun. And we constantly get, I drove her nuts today, didn't I, Loretta? We were, and it was all over a sink. It's amazing. You come down to it. But it's the fun part about life because you can look back and you can laugh on it now, which is important. I love all this stuff. I can't help it. So it makes me feel better. It makes me feel like I'm doing something in my life. At the same time, I'm bullheaded. And so I like to get things a certain way. At the same time, I have to realize it's not always going to work the way I want it to work. It might work a different way. And you got to adjust and be open to it. Remember my spiritual words? You got to accept it and adjust and move on. It's all part of it. And so that inner child work is so important because as you do family of origin, you're preparing yourself to really go to meet that little child that's inside of you. And next week, I'll give you all kinds of little techniques. I'll do 2 meditations with you to help you go into that little child and get to know that little child and get to meet that little child. And that's so important. It's a big part of the process we're going to work on. Because I really believe that if you take the time and be as thorough as you can be with these 7 questions, and then basically learn to work through them and process them. This is a good process to use. You can take the stuff you write on your 7 questions, take them to your therapist. A lot of therapists used to send people to my codependency groups because it helped them to be able to do therapy better, to look at histories, to look at your concept. I've got issues. I'm glad I got issues. They're part of me, they're part of my makeup. As a result, it's that old saying, getting to know me is getting to love me. The more you get to know about yourself, we all got idiosyncrasies, we got little behaviors, and we have that big disease called expectations. And I expect everybody else to be what I want them to be. That takes care of that. They're not gonna listen to you. And then we get crazy trying to control. We get into fear, all that crazy stuff. It's all our codependency stuff. We have to learn how to process that stuff through and realize the fact it's not my job to fix anybody else. It's not my job to rescue anybody else. It's my job to carry a message, to plant a seed, and then to let go. I'm learning that as I go through this process. I'm also learning that I'm going to go through things in life. I'm going to go through losses. I look at my family right now. There's only 2 members of my family left. My whole entire huge Italian family. I got 2 cousins left. It means there's 3 of us left. Count me. And now I'm the patriarch of the 3. Wow. That means I'm probably on the upper end. So the concept is, it's part of the journey. Do I miss a lot of them? Yeah, I do. Do I miss people I've lost? Yes. But I realize today, I've had people in my family die from drug addiction. I've had people in my family die from cirrhosis of the liver. I buried 2 of my cousins because of addiction. And it's scary to get around this stuff. Do I wish it was different? Yes, I do. But I realized today that was their journey. I have to learn from them and move forward from them, even though there's a sadness involved in that too. And so this technique I'm telling you about can help you in the grieving process, can help you in the living process, can help you in your daily process. But above all, it works very well in relationships. If you're upset with your partner, instead of, having a knockdown fight, process this stuff through. And by the way, this is not something new. Craig learned this probably from the United States Army. If things aren't working, you back away, you retreat, you process it, you work through it, and then you respond. It's okay to back away. It was interesting when I first got married and I inherited 3 teenage stepdaughters. And of course, I learned this from my therapist. I learned how to, as a step parent, to step back. And so my wife and I had a nice technique. Technique was, you do direct parenting, I'll do indirect parenting. So my wife had this uncanny way of saying to the kids, when they would bring something up or talk about something, she'd say, well, let me think about that, I'll get back to you. She'd drive them nuts. They got used to it after a while. And then her and I would discuss it, process it, talk about it, and then she would take the response back to them. It was a great parenting tool our therapist taught us. And it worked really well. But the hardest part was being able to not give a quick answer to everything. We have to learn how to think. And this is one of my big issues I have to always work on in my life, because part of me wants that reactor in me, man. Woo. And then you have a thing called foot in the mouth disease. We're all familiar with that one, aren't we? Then getting the damn thing out of your mouth is the toughest thing in the world to do. So before we say things, before we do things. And so this writing process is a great way to be able to work through different things in the course of your journey in life. But above all, the most important thing, we each have a beautiful little child inside of us. And that little child operates the way a child's supposed to operate. And that is, I want what I want when I want it. My little child is a reactor. The adult in me has to build this relationship with that little child. To build a relationship with that little child. And allow that little child to become a big part of me. Right? So he said, yes. That's the beautiful part about it. And we learn from the little kids inside of us. They are spontaneous. I often say this, the greatest example of this, when you first have a child and it's 2:00 in the morning and the child's hungry, it doesn't lay in the crib and say, I think I'll just wait till morning because I don't want to disturb my mom and dad. I'm hungry at 2:00. Guess what? You're getting up, sucker. You're going to feed me. Because if not, you're not going to sleep anyway. So the bottom line is, that reactor is inside of all of us. We never lose that. I got to calm down. I got to relax. I got to process. So I'm trying to brainwash you in processing tonight. You know why I'm doing that? I brainwash me in doing it. Because boy, I still have a hard time with this. I really do. I can share this. I can talk about it, but I still, that little kid kicks in every so often. And I have to have a little, it's okay. It's all part of being human. And so we'll take this into the inner child work and conclude the series next week. And I'm going to begin the night with a meditation and end the night with a meditation, a visualization meditation, but also take you through some beautiful things to connect them to that little inner child. We'll work through this stuff and begin to see the process with it as we go through it. Next week, you will need the photograph of you as a little child. You can bring that with you. And I do recommend to bring your stuffed animal also if you have one, or anything that connects you back to being a little child again. Okay, we'll work on stuff next week. Okay, so my prayer tonight is that we have the willingness and the openness to open our heart and open our mind to be able to use this stuff as a process to move through life. It's all about healing and it's all about growing. So let us pray. God, we come before you in prayer. We come before you in joy. We come before you and ask for your guidance, your help, and your protection. Help us to have the willingness to be open, to have the willingness to grow, to have the willingness to change. Help us to look at life and be able to face it, be able to deal with it, to learn from it and grow from it. Teach us to be open to the messengers and the things we have to do in life. But above all, help us to be able to meet that little child that's inside of us, the little child that is filled with love and energy. And as we go on a journey next week to be able to experience that child, please help us and guide us on the journey. You are a guide. You are there at all times to help us through this process. Teach us the value of just taking our time and working through it a little bit at a time with your help and your guidance. We pray and we ask this in your name. Amen. And now, if you don't mind unmuting yourselves, I'm going to ask the maestro to take over. Where's the
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.